Hey, Rook Knight here. Thanks for joining me. And if you're interested in how to make this floating core or convertible core, stick around and I'm going to show you the walkthrough on how I made this. At first, though, I want to go through some of the tools that might not have been apparent in the video on what I was using. First off, the bit inside the Dremel is this wheel burr. Try to get a better shot of that. This is the largest one that came in this, and it's the 1 mil. But that is what's going to be inside the Dremel in a couple of seconds, as well as the vise I was using. This is a corner vise. I do not recommend using this. You're actually looking for a vise that's, just one of these. It fits flat, but it can be able to move around. Inside is just a couple pieces of spare aluminum I had, just because of the lip of the lip here had to be able to fit flat. So I used this to build it up. You'll see it more in the video on what I'm talking about, but just FYI, this is not the correct thing to use. You're better off using something a lot lighter and half the size, but this is what I had. This is what I used. And last but not least, I didn't really get a faraway shot to show what I was using, but for the sacrifice core, this is what I'll be using to cut it with. It's just a jeweler saw. I think it was 12 bucks on Amazon if you're interested. But that's what I'll be using. And without any further ado, let's get into the video. We could talk about how to make this floating core. Alright, just to talk about some of the things that might not be obvious, but you're going to need to find a way to hold your Dremel in place. I was lucky enough to get this stand off of Jay Gabriel, which shout out to him because none of these videos would probably be impossible. But once you find a way to mount it, I have here that vise I showed you, and also a piece of wood that kind of floats around just to be able to make it easier to move the core. But all I'm doing is dropping the wheel burr a little bit into the chamber of the lock and then ripping it away, and then coming back and dropping it a little bit more and then taking off another layer. And I'm just going to continue doing that for as long as I need to until the depth that I want to get, and it really isn't that hard. You might even notice I'm using my left hand to do all this actually, and my right hand is on the lever for the Dremel. Once you feel like you got it low enough, you can start on a little small file trying to straighten up the edges. This is all done by eye. I have no measurements for you. It's all kind of like what you think is the right, length to do it. It doesn't really matter too much on what the depth is. So it's just pretty much eyeballing it for me. That's when I have the most fun anyway, is just eyeballing a project instead of having to measure everything. It's pretty much just a lot of polishing and elbow grease, but basically that's pretty much the finished product right there for this part of the project. Next, we're going to start getting into the sacrificial core, and we're going to have to be cutting that to be able to fit a piece in. So here we go. This is the sacrificial core. I actually used it on a past project. That's why it's already missing a chamber. But my goal here is to cut out the 3 chambers for this one. So I don't know if I mentioned this, but you definitely want to cut it a little bit fatter than you think you need. A little bit deeper, so you can always just go and sand it off. It's easy to sand it off. It's hard to put it back on. So basically, after you get it done, then now we're going to have the more chambers on here than we're going to need. I only need 3 chambers, so I'm going to put it back in the vise and I'm going to chop off so I just have 3 chambers to working with. And if you're doing yours, you can do as many chambers as you want. I did, one project I did 1, and this project is, 3 chambers, but you could do all 6 if you really wanted to. It doesn't really matter. This is just, I kind of sped this up here. There's not really much to watch. It just kind of gives you a demonstration on what to do. All right, so we got our 3 chambers, you can see here, but it's definitely overkill. So it's not going to fit right off the bat. I'm sure if I measured it, I probably would get closer, but honestly, I was just in a rush kind of thing and just wanted to have fun messing with this. You might be able to see that piece of stick sticking out. It's actually just a bamboo rod that you get for like shish kebabs, I think they call them, in the grocery store. You get a pack of like 100 of them, but they work great with like sticking it in to be able to get a handle on these things. And right now all I'm going to be doing is filing it or sanding it rather, to try to make it flat. And the biggest thing is now is going to be working on the sides to bring it in enough to make it fit. So it's going to be a lot of sanding and then checking, sanding, checking, sanding, checking, sanding, checking. but it seems to do the trick and gets the job done. Getting closer there, and we're just going to keep on sanding and trying to double check. Eventually we're going to get to the point, and this is also where that stick comes in handy, because it gives you an idea on what side you have to sand more, and to get it so it's level and it fits in straight with the chambers on the bottom, so they line up correctly, if that makes sense. I actually, in the future here, I'm coming up, you're going to see me, I'm going to actually apply 2 more sticks, so I'll have 3 sticks total, and that'll help me guarantee that I'm having all those chambers lined up better. So after a lot of sanding, we're finally able to sink it down. We're getting closer to being able to make it flush, and we're just going to keep working on those sides until we finally make a flush connection with the bottom, and then we can start worrying about making it fit flush with the overhead, if that makes sense. And there we go, we're just about touching the bottom, and that stick ensures that, there we go, there's the 3 sticks I was talking about. That ensures all chambers are even and lined up in place. So now what I did is I just sanded them down to make them flat. You could, pull them out if you want, or you could just sand them off to make them flush. But now we're going to focus on trying to shrink it down more, so I'm going to be sanding the bottom a lot. And once again, we're just going to keep checking and seeing how much more we have to sand. And eventually we'll get low enough to where we're going to start coming from the top and sanding from the top once I feel like I have enough, only a couple millimeters left. You can see here, there's only a few millimeters of it sticking out. And now I'm going to chop these off, because they're going to now act as my glue, or, to make sure I'm continuously being lined up with the pins for later. So I'm going to chop those off. I'm going to sand them down. So we're just going to sand these down, make them flush, and then we can start sanding from the top instead of sanding the bottom, basically. And it's pretty much just using the heavy duty sandpaper, 80 grit, and you're going to be attacking it from the top now of it, and instead of worrying about the bottom, now that you're flush on either sides and on the bottom, you're going to just take off those couple of millimeters. Definitely a lot of elbow grease. Once again, your elbows will be probably burning, but it'll be worth it. It'll look cool, and it should do there's a few tricks you could do with this, and I'll show you hopefully one of them at the end of this. So now we're getting down to the finer sandpaper, more like 300 grit, and we're going to be checking to see if it fits the core, and just back and forth checking the fit. Once we finally have the fit, we can go in and get into something like 600 sandpaper, just to finish it all up, make it all match, make it look nice, and that's about it. I mean, we're pretty much at finished product here, and we're just going to remove those pieces of wood after, and we should have pins fitting perfectly. And now we'll also go back and I'll show you one of the things you could do with these floating cores with the finished product kind of thing. And just give me a second, and I'll show you here removing those pieces of wood, and really simple. And there we go. We have our floating core, convertible core, whatever you want to call it. And let's go back to the table and take a look at it. Alright, just a quick recap. So this is not a finished product by any means. I only have regular pins in here, but if you could imagine some security pins in there, and what you can see is underneath here, I actually bored it out a little on the bottom, but not on the top, and that should give for some good play and, getting those security pins to stick, as well as if you see here, it does actually float a little bit and bounce around, which should be an interesting picking experience. As well as gutting it should be fun too, for anybody that you're going to send these out to. With that said, that's all I got, and if you're still sticking with me for this long video, I know I don't usually make them, so I do appreciate you still watching, and thanks, I really do appreciate your support, and we'll catch you next time.